Linda, honey, where are you? I called out as soon as I got home. I could hear someone crying, but I couldn't find my daughter. The sound was faint and echoed through the house. Something was very wrong. When I finally found her in her room, I was frozen with shock. My daughter, who loved her long, curly hair, had her head completely shaved. Sweetheart, what happened? Who did this to you? I asked, my voice shaking as anger built up inside me. Then she said something that made my blood boil. It was Grandma, Mom, Linda cried, her eyes red. She said I looked like a delinquent with my hair, and she shaved it all off by force. In that moment, I felt a mix of shock, pain, and a rage I had never experienced before. I silently vowed to get revenge. Hi, I'm Isabella. I'm 31, single, and a full-time mom. My world revolves around my 9-year-old daughter, Linda. We live in a small, cozy house in the suburbs. It's nothing fancy, but it's ours. Between my exhausting shifts as a nurse, I do my best to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. It's not easy, but no one ever said it would be. Linda is full of creativity and smarts, and her curly hair is like something out of a fairy tale. If it were just the two of us, life would be perfect. But there's a dark cloud over our peaceful life, Julie. She's my ex-mother-in-law, and she lives too close for comfort. Julie is 65, a widow with a sharp tongue. She helps take care of Linda after school, and I guess I should be grateful, but the cost is constant criticism. Isabella, dear, she always starts in that snarky voice that gives me chills. Don't you think Linda's hair is a bit too wild? I take a deep breath and respond calmly. She likes it that way, Julie. But inside, I'm fuming. Back in my day, girls knew how to present themselves. She sneers like she's some kind of queen from the past. I hold back my words because, as much as I'd love to, I want to scream. Free childcare is something I can't afford to lose. What makes living with Julie even harder is knowing how strict she was with her own son, Linda's father, yet he still went down the wrong path. Tyler, Linda's dad, grew up under Julie's strict control. She believed that being tough and using harsh discipline would shape him into a better person. He could never truly be himself around her. Everything he did was judged by her. As he got older, he rejected everything she tried to force on him. He rebelled and made bad choices that eventually led him to prison. That took away any chance of Linda having a father in her life. Julie blames the world and me for what happened to Tyler. According to her, I ruined her son, as if I pushed him into the life he chose. But in reality, it was her suffocating control that drove Tyler away. Now, she directs all her bitterness and anger at me and Linda, and the cycle continues. Julie sees Linda as her second chance to mold someone her way, and I have to stand in the way of that. At first, Julie begged to help with Linda. She insisted that, as a grandmother, she deserved to be part of Linda's life. Isabella, I'm old, but I want to be here for my granddaughter. Let me help, she'd say, almost desperately. I'll admit, part of me wanted to believe she was sincere. I needed the help. Between my crazy hospital shifts and life as a single mom, having someone's support sounded like a relief, even if it was Julie. I wanted to believe she could change and be a positive influence on Linda. After all, help is help, right? But every day, I regret that decision more. Julie slowly wormed her way into our lives, bringing her rules, her expectations, and her harsh judgments. Her presence became a burden. She wasn't helping, she was trying to control everything, just like she did with Tyler. And we all know how badly that turned out. Thankfully, I have Emma, my best friend and coworker.
She's my lifeline.
How do you deal with that old witch? She asked me the other day as we sipped coffee, adding sugar like she was trying to sweeten the bitter conversation. You've got the patience of a saint, Isabella, she said. I gave a tired laugh. It's running out, Emma, it's running out. And then there's Peter, my neighbor, who's always there to help with repairs around the house. Let's be real, he's a total heartthrob. The way he looks at me. Well, if I hadn't learned the hard way with Linda's father, I might actually consider something. But after the mess of that relationship, my rule is simple. Keep your distance. Hey, Isabella, need a hand? Peter calls out from the street. Here he comes with that tight shirt and easy smile. I try not to notice his biceps as he lifts boxes from the garage. Thanks, Peter. You're a lifesaver, I say, though in my head I'm thinking, and a temptation I don't need right now. But let's get to the real drama in my life, which isn't handsome neighbors, it's the constant tension between Julie and me. The battlefield? Linda's upbringing. Linda, sit up straight. A young lady doesn't slouch. Julie snaps during dinner, like she's training my daughter for the military. I see Linda's shoulders slump, and my heart sinks. Mom, do I have to listen to her? Linda whispers to me, clearly worn out by it all. I glance at Julie, silently warning her that this war between us won't go on forever. Do your best, sweetheart, I tell Linda, trying to comfort her. We all have different ideas about what's important, I say, my tone sharpening as I look at Julie. Different ideas, yes, Julie mutters with that superior attitude that makes me want to scream. If you'd listen to me, Isabella, this girl wouldn't be running wild. I clench my fists under the table, struggling not to lose my temper. She's not running wild, Julie. She's expressing herself, and I won't stop her from doing that, I say, my voice harsher than I intended. I'm so close to losing my patience. Julie, as usual, responds coolly. Mark my words, Isabella. Without discipline, that girl will end up in trouble. I watch as Linda retreats to her room, her curls bouncing curls that I wouldn't see for much longer. A chill runs down my spine. I've been balancing this situation for so long, but something tells me it's about to blow up, and it won't be pretty. After a long shift at the hospital, all I wanted was to come home, hug Linda, and forget about Julie for a few hours. But as soon as I walked through the door, I felt that something was terribly wrong. Linda, sweetheart, I'm home, I called, but there was no answer. The silence was heavy, the kind that only comes before something awful happens. A chill crept up my spine. I ran to her room, and when I opened the door, my heart stopped. Linda was curled up on the bed, sobbing, her shoulders shaking. When she finally looked up at me, I nearly collapsed. Her curls were gone, shaved down to the scalp. Mom, Linda cried, running into my arms. Grandma did this while I was sleeping. I held Linda tightly, trying not to break down. It's going to be okay, sweetheart. We'll fix this, I whispered, but inside I was burning with anger. My mind was screaming, how dare she do this to my daughter? Furious, I stormed into the living room like a whirlwind. Julie was sitting there, calm as ever, like nothing had happened. My daughters, I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. What have you done? I was shaking with rage, but Julie didn't even blink. I did what needed to be done, she said coolly, which only made me angrier. That girl was becoming too vain and disobedient, Isabella, she continued in that bossy tone, as if she was speaking some undeniable truth. Vain? Disobedient? I almost laughed at how ridiculous it sounded. My blood was boiling. She's 9, Julie. What are you even talking about? It's time she learned some discipline, Julie replied calmly, like she was discussing something completely normal. In my day, girls who cared too much about their looks like Linda does ended up lost. You think it's just hair, but today it's curls, tomorrow it's makeup and nice clothes, and then before you know it, she'll be pregnant, alone, and ruined. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Pregnant? Linda is only 9, I said, shocked. Julie just kept talking like she was reading from some outdated manual. I was trembling with anger, barely able to speak through the fury building inside me. She's a child, Julie, not a grown woman. What you did wasn't discipline, it was cruel. Don't be so naive, Isabella, Julie said, shaking her head like I didn't understand anything. If you keep letting her be vain and free, she'll end up lost, with no morals or direction, just like her father. That was too much. I snapped. Shut up, I screamed. This isn't your time. You old witch. You shaved her head against her will. That's not discipline, it's assault. I'm calling the police. Julie let out a dry laugh, like she thought she was above everything. Oh, Isabella, don't be so dramatic.
You've always been weak.
I've put up with your soft parenting for too long. Someone had to step in before Linda went down the wrong path, just like her father. And you didn't even notice. That was the last straw. My shaky self-control finally broke. I was trembling all over, barely able to hold back my tears. How dare she compare Linda to Ronald and blame me like I had failed? Get out of my house now, I shouted, tears streaming down my face. I will never let you touch my daughter again, I said. Julie, as cold as ever, calmly gathered her things without a hint of guilt. Mark my words, Isabella, you'll regret not listening to me, she said with that venomous tone I knew too well. When the door finally closed behind her, I collapsed, letting the tears fall. I felt like I had failed to protect my daughter. But right then, I made a silent promise Julie would never hurt us again. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. It was Peter, my neighbor, with a worried look on his face, the kind of look you get from someone who truly cares. Isabella, is everything okay? I heard shouting, he asked. As soon as he saw my face, he knew something terrible had happened. What happened? He asked gently but urgently. I couldn't speak, so I just pointed to Linda's room. When Peter saw her, his eyes widened in shock. Oh my God, who did this? He whispered. Julie, I muttered, my voice shaking with hatred. Every word felt heavy. Peter's face shifted from concern to anger, like a soldier ready to fight. This is unacceptable. I'm calling the police right now, he said firmly. No, Linda cried, her voice trembling with fear. I don't want anyone to see me like this. She curled up in my arms, and I held her tightly, trying to shield her from the pain and shame she was feeling. It's okay, sweetheart, I whispered, trying to comfort her. We won't do anything you don't want to do. I'm here. Peter knelt beside us, his face full of concern and quiet anger. Is there anything I can do? He asked, with the kindness of someone who truly wants to help and the firmness of someone who won't stand for injustice. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. It was Emma, my best friend, and I could hear the worry in her voice. Isabella, what's going on? I got your message, and it sounded like you were falling apart. I could barely get the words out between sobs as I told her what had happened. That witch. Emma shouted through the phone. I'm coming over right now. Not long after, there was another knock at the door. In no time, Emma was inside, her arms full of bags like some kind of hero ready to save the day. Okay, here's the plan, she said, determined, raising tissues, hats, and style magazines. I brought ideas for pixie cuts and some inspirations for colored streaks. We're going to fix this right now. Linda, still heartbroken, managed a small smile as Emma got to work. And in that moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. I realized how lucky I was to have friends like Emma. She always knew how to fix things with practicality and a bit of humor. Relax, Aunt Emma is here to save the day. And if that old witch comes back, we'll give her a new haircut with an axe, she joked. While Emma worked on what was left of Linda's hair, Peter sat down beside me, and I poured my heart out. I told him everything Julie had done, every wound she had opened, not just in Linda, but in me as well. Guilt stuck in my throat like poison. I can't believe I let that woman get so close to my daughter, I whispered. The days that followed were a blur of tears, anger, and sleepless nights. Linda refused to leave her room, let alone go back to school. I called into work, saying I was sick, but the truth was, Linda needed me more than ever, and that was all that mattered. Our first stop was the police station, where we quickly hit a wall. The officer, looking uninterested, said, I'm sorry, ma'am, but since there was no physical harm, this is a civil matter. Physical harm? I couldn't hold back my anger. Look at my daughter. How can you say there was no harm? But it seemed the law was on Julie's side. The injustice was clear, and it made me want to scream. Next, we went to see a lawyer. He listened carefully and said, we can definitely pursue a claim for emotional damages. It gave me a small glimmer of hope, but I knew no legal action could undo the emotional damage Julie had caused. Meanwhile, Peter was also working behind the scenes. I have a friend who specializes in family law, he told me one day, his eyes full of determination. He's willing to take your case for free. In that moment, I could have kissed him, but there wasn't time for that. Things were about to get even more complicated, and I knew I'd need all the strength I had left. We're going to bury that witch in paperwork, Peter said with a firm resolve, and with Emma by my side, I knew I wasn't alone in this fight. Soon, the whispers started in the supermarket, sideways glances from neighbors, hushed conversations. Then I began getting calls from distant relatives. Isabella, is it true you've been neglecting Linda? A cousin asked, her voice full of judgment. That's when I realized Julie was playing dirty. She wasn't just trying to hurt me, she wanted to ruin me. She had started spreading rumors, making me out to be an unfit mother. I collapsed on the sofa next to Emma and Peter, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. She's trying to turn everyone against me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I let out everything I was feeling, the lump in my throat growing stronger, but I knew Julie had underestimated me. If she wanted a fight, she was going to get one. I decided to take action. I started digging into Julie's past, calling her relatives, old friends, anyone who had known her. I wanted to find out what else she was hiding, and what I discovered left me shocked. One night, while crying, Linda finally told me what she had been keeping secret. If I misbehaved, Grandma would say she'd send me to boarding school, she said, hesitating for a moment. Then, with tears in her eyes, she continued, she used to lock me in the closet when I did something wrong. My blood boiled. How had I not seen this sooner? How had I let my daughter suffer at the hands of that woman for so long? I hugged Linda tightly, my heart breaking with both guilt and anger. This is not your fault, sweetheart, I told her. Your grandmother will never hurt you again. With Emma and Peter's help, we started planning our counterattack. We set up hidden cameras around the house, creating a way to gather evidence in case Julie tried to reach out to us again. We even trained Linda, teaching her how to collect proof without putting herself at risk. Remember, Linda, Peter said gently but firmly as he showed her how to use the voice recorder on her phone. If your grandmother calls or shows up, record everything. Don't leave room for mistakes. We were ready. Julie had no idea what was coming. I had been on the defensive for too long, but now it was my turn to act. Press this button as soon as you need to, I told Linda, looking her in the eyes. She nodded, her determination making me both proud and sad. I won't let you down, Mom. You could never let me down, my love, I replied, hugging her tightly. We're in this together, all the way. The trap was set, and all we had to do was wait for Julie's next move. This time, I wasn't just going to defend myself, I was going to take her down. The day of the trial finally came, and I felt sick with nerves. The tension was almost unbearable. Linda squeezed my hand as we walked into the courtroom, her eyes focused on the floor, but her determination gave me strength. You can do this, Mom, she whispered, and that courage was all I needed to keep going. I didn't even realize how much evidence we had. Our lawyer started his presentation, and it felt like a mountain of proof was crashing down on Julie. The hidden camera footage showed everything. Julie's harsh voice echoed in the courtroom. You ungrateful brat. I'll teach you to never disobey me again. The judge, who had been calm until then, began to frown more deeply with every word from the recordings. But that was just the start. Witness after witness took the stand, former family friends, nannies, even Linda's old piano teacher. They all had their own stories. She told me if I didn't make Linda practice piano for 4 hours a day, she'd fire me, the teacher said nervously. The stories kept coming, stacking up like bricks, making the case against Julie impossible to deny. The most powerful moment came when Linda gave her testimony. My brave little girl stood in front of the courtroom, her voice shaky, but her determination strong. She told me if I told Mom what she did, she'd make sure I'd be taken away, Linda said through tears. I couldn't hold back my own tears then. Julie's lawyer tried to paint her as a caring, misunderstood grandmother, but it was too late. The evidence was clear, and the court wasn't buying it. The truth was out, and Julie had no escape. When the judge finally announced the decision, I almost collapsed with relief. This court grants a permanent restraining order against the defendant, the judge said firmly. Additionally, significant damages are awarded to cover therapy and emotional distress caused to the plaintiff. Julie was officially out of our lives forever. As we left the courtroom, feeling lighter than I had in months, Julie tried one last desperate move. She approached us, tears streaming down her face, tears she thought would earn forgiveness. "Isabella, Linda, I'm sorry," she began, her voice breaking. But before she could say more, I cut her off, cold and firm. "Save your apologies, Julie. You're dead to us." Without looking back, we walked away. In that moment, a huge weight was lifted from my shoulders. We were free. The months that followed were tough, but we faced them together. Linda started therapy, and slowly I saw my daughter come back to life. The sparkle in her eyes returned, and so did her strength. She was no longer hiding in a shell. One night, as we sat at the dinner table, me, Emma, Peter, and Linda, she made an unexpected announcement. "I want to donate the settlement money," Linda said firmly. "I want to help other kids who have gone through what I did." I smiled, proud of her strength. But as her words echoed in my mind, a plan started to take shape. Linda was healing, but I still carried a grudge. Julie had tried to destroy my daughter and ruin me, and I couldn't let her get away with it. She needed to feel what we had felt. Julie thought that with the restraining order and the distance between us, everything was over. She believed she could finally live in peace. What she didn't know was that the real battle was just beginning. First, I gave her a false sense of security: no contact, no confrontations. I let her think we had moved on, that the fight was over. But behind the scenes, I was preparing something much bigger. I knew her life, her secrets, her past mistakes. The woman who criticized everyone had skeletons in her closet, unpaid debts, old arguments, and a financial scandal connected to her late husband's money. If that got out, her reputation would be destroyed. With Emma and Peter's help, I started to reveal those secrets. The first move was an anonymous letter sent to a neighbor, hinting at the financial scandal. Then, another letter went to the condo's management. Nothing specific, just enough to raise questions and make Julie uncomfortable. Next, I reached out to an old friend of Julie's, someone she had betrayed years ago. I set up a chance meeting between them, and the friend brought up stories Julie wanted to keep hidden. Their already weak relationship fell apart completely. Julie's image began to crumble, but the final blow was the cruelest. She thrived on the admiration and respect she demanded from everyone. So, I spread a rumor that she was in financial trouble and that her own husband had swindled her. This scandal turned her into a joke among the social circles she valued so much. As the rumor spread, Julie became more and more isolated. She had no friends left, no reputation, no respect. The thing that mattered most to her status was gone. She was completely alone, and that destroyed her more than anything else. When the news of her downfall reached its peak, Julie tried to contact me. Maybe she wanted help, but by then, the caring Isabella no longer existed. There was no vulnerable Linda either. It was just me, watching from a distance, as she faced the consequences of her own actions. In the end, she hadn't ruined me, she had ruined herself.